Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be continuing my conversation with actor Kelly Ward. Please welcome back, Kelly.
I did a lot of directing at the college level, and that's always fulfilling because you can see talents evolving, and some people, rocketed right out of college into professional careers, others not so. But it's a wonderful environment because everybody is optimistic and everybody is hopeful, and their dreams are fresh, and that's a wonderful place to start when
Yeah.
you're telling stories.
Yeah, I saw that. It was this when, because I noticed that you had taught musical theater at USC. Was that a piece of that, or that
That
was
was certainly a piece of that. Yeah. Yeah. Their productions were courses. So yes, I did teach some performance classes, but I also directed a handful of musicals for them from about 1997 to 2016, off and on. But I had a lot of fun doing that. And it's my alma mater, so that was kind of nice as well. I got my start there as a film actor. I came up in theater in San Diego. My parents were director, producer, choreographers.
oh wow.
And so it was kind of the family business. Rather than playing Little League or football, we took ballet classes and voice classes and acting classes. That was, and so in the back of my mind, I yearned to play Little League and things. But I came up to LA to go to USC, where they had a really great film school and still do. After my freshman semester, I got cast in what at the time they called the 480 film, which is a graduate student film that's color and sound, shot on 16, and it wound up getting it launched my career. The film won a Student Academy Award. The
Wow.
award was presented by Groucho Marx. I got to meet Groucho.
Wow, how fun.
It just opened so many doors. So that decision of where you go to college is kind of an important one. And it doesn't mean that's not to say go to USC. It means choose well and take advantage of the opportunities that your college
Mm.
offers you. I mean, it could just as well have been UCLA or North Carolina School of the Arts or Carnegie Mellon, any of those schools that I had applied to at the time.
Yeah, wow. So always kind of a fun question I enjoy. So when you were teaching, directing on the college level, who were sort of the success stories? I mean, who I always love those kind of, hey, I worked with so and so, I directed so and so, before they were.
Um, yeah, well, they may not be known to your audience, but Donald Webber Jr., who's done Hamilton all over, and he's done it with Lin-Manuel. He's played Burr opposite Lin-Manuel, and he's a great career. Charles Brown played Smokey Robinson on Broadway, was nominated for a Tony Award. Stark Sands, who did Kinky Boots and he did Bonnie and Clyde, the out of town tryout for Bonnie and Clyde when they were trying to get that up on Broadway, has been nominated for Tony Awards. Briga Heelan, she's done television and Broadway, and she's had an amazing career. In fact, she played opposite Donald Webber in a production of The Pajama Game that I directed. James Snyder. There's a lot of actors have come through that program and achieved notable success.
That's
Um,
great.
it's a really good program, and I was fortunate to be able to work with all of those very talented people. And I'm sure I'm leaving people out that I should mention.
So did you yourself do a lot of musical theater because of your background? I mean, clearly we're going to talk about Grease.
Yeah,
Can't not.
I can't escape without talking about Greece.
Sorry, I can't escape
Um,
talking about the Waltons. You're stuck with
yep,
Grease.
yep, you know. I did do a lot of musical theater growing up. Started out doing Gilbert and Sullivan plays at the college level because they needed a little kid. And I performed in my parents' nightclub act once in a while. my folks would bring me out and make me tap dance on the piano, and do a duet with my dad. But I was in a theater conservatory for youth that was run by the city of San Diego at the time, called San Diego Junior Theater. And it's continued to this day. I think it may be the longest running youth theater conservatory in the country. Lots and lots of people have gone to junior theater. And my dad ran it for 14 years.
Mm.
And so you did plays. They did 7 or 8 musicals and dramas a year. And that was what we did. And in addition, we did the San Diego Opera. My brother and sister and I, we did San Diego Civic Light Opera, which produced the more professional level musicals at the Starlight Bowl.
Oh, where they stop every time the airplanes go over?
Yes, yes, yes. And also at a wonderful facility called Circle Arts Theater, which was a theater in the round that, alas, is no longer in
Mhm.
existence. And it really was one of the most exhilarating experiences of my life to work in the round and to learn what that was all about at the ripe old age of 10. Um, with a brilliant director named Ernie Saraceno, who worked in Las Vegas and in San Diego and the other 2 cities, LA, of course. So yeah, I did a lot of theater, and particularly musical theater growing up, as well as the occasional opera and ballet.
Wow, so
And
you were certainly a true triple threat, and I expect exactly the combo that the people who were casting and directing for Grease were looking for. So you were sort of,
yeah, well, that's an interesting. It's a real lesson in who knows you,
mm,
because as I mentioned, it kind of began with a film I did at USC, which got me an agent who got me an audition for a new Broadway show called Truckload that was being done in 1975. And everybody involved with this show called Truckload, except for the director, had been involved in Grease. Patricia Burch, who was the choreographer of Grease, was the director of Truckload. The composer was Louis St. Louis, who had been the musical director of Grease. The lighting designer had done Grease. The costume designer had done Grease. Everybody involved with our new play, other than the script writer, had been involved with that. And so I got to meet everybody who was Grease in New York at the time. Though the show didn't pan out, and I came back to LA, I had met key players that were to then go on and be involved with the film. Between that experience and shooting the movie or being cast in Grease, I auditioned for a TV movie called The Boy in the Plastic Bubble,
ah,
which was cast and produced by Joel Thurm and directed by Randall Kleiser, both of whom went on to be involved intimately with Grease.
ah.
And so I knew 2 more major players in what was to become the Grease movie. And when it came time to audition, I kind of had a leg up. Because by then also I had signed with John Travolta's management company,
Ah, because
which
you
was,
worked with John in Boy in the Plastic Bubble.
yeah, because I'd worked with John. So it really was a nice confluence of events that led to the casting for that.
Mhm.
And it was unusual in that we had an audition room where everybody was all the dancers who were the people in LA who wanted to be dancers and supporting characters in the film were coming in and auditioning, and hundreds of people were coming in, and eventually they were paring it down. Those of us who had read for the film were also involved with this kind of boil down. And we might have had 40, 50 people in this room at one point. And by the end of the day, they boiled it down to 10 of us, and they said, "You're our cast,"
Wow.
in the room.
Wow.
And it was stunning. It was, as one of my colleagues, Barry Pearl, always reminds us every year, on May 19th, we were cast in Greece,
Wow.
1977.
So was it a combo? Did you in that day, were you strictly dancing, or were you dancing and singing, or were you dancing, singing, and acting all in that day?
Danced, we improved, we did some singing. Yeah, we did a little bit of everything.
And I imagine
Um,
they were looking to form the ensemble and the interaction as well, because
yeah, yeah. They paired us up with different people. I was paired at one point with Dee Dee Khan to dance, and she was having a little bit of difficulty with the dance moves. But rather than cajole her, Pat Burch said, "No, no, do what you're doing. Do what you're doing because it's authentic." And Pat Burch is a really interesting choreographer from a storytelling standpoint and a director as well, because she's had a great career as a director too. You would never go see a Pat Burch production of Carousel, for example, and see the longshoremen really dancing like they had been in a ballet class.
uh,
They would dance like longshoremen, which is to say, not in unison, not pretty. It would be joyful
hmm.
and individual and celebratory. And that is part of the magic of the movie of Grease, because there are some people who are very adept dancers. One of whom was very was one of Richard Thomas's very good friends, Daniel Evans,
And yeah,
um, who is maybe the best dancer I've ever seen
hmm.
in live. Danny Levins.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
I knew him. Yeah,
what a beautiful dancer.
watch him dance with Richard's sister, who was an
Ah,
incredible ballet dancer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
God rest him.
yes.
But yeah, everybody was individual. They were great dancers, but everybody danced in a unique and funny way. And the pairings of the couples was deliberate so that you got a unique dynamic, and nobody was dancing like they are in a chorus line. It was exactly the opposite. We are not trying to shed your identity and dance exactly the same as everybody else. It was no, put on a character, invent names for yourself, invent personas,
Mhm.
so that the 30 people comprise the core cast, you get the T-Birds and the Pink Ladies, but then you have 10 women who are part of the high school student body who appear again and again and again, and 10 men in the same capacity. They're all paired, and it's really unique and interesting.
Hmm. So were you auditioning for a particular role, or did they then decide within that and move people around? Did they create roles around who the people you cast?
I can't exactly recall. I think I was auditioning for a particular role because I read dialogue. But unusually, the character I play doesn't have a name that is in the play. My character was created specifically for the film because the name Putsy apparently was a somewhat pejorative nickname that Alan Carr had been given in high school. Or maybe it was loving. I don't know. But my understanding is that Alan Carr was tagged with that name.
Hmm.
And so he wanted to memorialize that in the film. And I got it. Instead of Roger, I became Putsy.
Gotcha.
I don't know if I was reading Roger dialogue at the time. I'm not really sure. I don't really recall.
Hmm.
And it is almost 50 years ago.
Yeah. And how long how a rehearsal period for,
Yeah.
and then,
Yes. We rehearsed for 2 solid weeks. I believe it was on stage 25 at Paramount. And Cubby O'Brien was our rehearsal drummer. And I was like, okay, you're blowing my mind. He's a Musketeer. He's our drummer. It was great. Louis St. Louis played the piano, and we learned all the songs, which we then later recorded at Glen Glen Sound on the lot at Paramount. We did not learn You're the One That I Want, because that was I'll tell you about that in a little bit. That was a total surprise. But we learned all the other material the same way you would if you're rehearsing a musical or a Broadway show. We staged all the musical numbers during that time. The dance at the gym was broadly staged because we didn't have the gym ready to hand to put it into, but everybody knew what they were going to do. When we finally saw the space, it was easy to adjust it to the room. But it was wonderful watching Pat Burch stage the girls in Sandra Dee. It was delightful. I mean, we actually saw it come to life on that soundstage, and Grease Lightning was later shot on that soundstage after it had been completely painted white and converted, and the white cyclorama was put in, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah, great number.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's. I think it's my favorite.
Yeah, but what you said about all the personalities, that it wasn't like watching a chorus of dancers. It was watching a bunch of guys who could move really well and in some cases dance really well, but just yeah, the fun of it and the attitude of it.
Yeah, yeah. There was something to learn every day about how to put this all together. And it, if you were a sponge, and I like to think I was at the time, you could really pick up a lot of good information from watching how all these pros went about their business. Watching Bill Butler design shots. I mean, Randall Kleiser and Bill Butler combined to really make everybody look gorgeous in that film. I mean, every shot's really pretty juicy and tasty. That, I think that has a lot to do with its popularity,
Mm.
beyond the fact that it's universally relatable. All the discomfort of teen life and
Yeah,
angst.
we all went through it in our
Yeah,
own ways. Yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean, we clearly, as a cast on the Waltons, really bonded and are still family now, 50 plus years later.
sure.
You guys weren't together as long, but we spoke briefly, and you were talking about how you're constantly continuing to do things related to the movie. So, how were those dynamics then and carrying forward?
Well, Alan Carr worked really hard to create a party atmosphere for the entire summer. It really was like an amazing summer-long party, and that had a lot to do with the way he approached building an atmosphere around the production. And so it was easy to become friends with everybody. The playing field was relatively level. It was just a really good time, and lifelong friends, lifelong friendships definitely were made. Sadly, we've lost Olivia and Annette and Dennis and some others, and certainly the older actors. But yeah, remain tight with Michael Tucci and Barry Pearl and Jamie Donnelly and Dee Dee Khan and Dinah Manoff. They're all good pals. And Randall Kleiser was still a regular contact with Randall. And if I call John, I'll get a call back almost within the hour.
That's great. Well, did it make it easier the fact that you'd done Boy in the Plastic Bubble with him already?
It did. It did. We already had a relationship. Of course, he knew everybody else because I was the only one of the five guys who hadn't done the Broadway play or the national tour.
Ah,
So, as far as I know, I think Barry and Michael knew. I know Michael knew John. I think Barry knew John as well, but certainly Jeff knew John because John may have played Duty when Jeff was playing Danny Zuko on Broadway.
fun.
That's a weird dynamic. Um, but yeah, John and I would often go off, and he was a big Gene Kelly fan,
Mm.
and we would trade some dance steps back and forth. He was always available, always chummy, and from the very first day I met him, when I did The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, we met on the campus of Taft High School in Woodland Hills, and he was very open and cheerful. I
Yeah.
mean, I could take you to the very spot I met him.
Uh, yeah, I've known him since his Welcome Back Cotter days. We would cross
Yeah.
paths here and there, and don't know him well, but I periodically run across him, and he's always been, very. He doesn't look at me like who, what.
Yeah, no, no, he's he's
He's a
he's
good guy,
a
genuine.
really good spirit.
And how was Olivia? She seems like a sweetheart, but
I had the heaviest crush
oh,
on Olivia. I was so smitten,
mm.
um, and I think she knew it, and she was very kind. She, I never heard her say a negative word about anything or anybody. ever.
Wow.
Um, she just made everything and everybody around her better.
Hmm.
She just did. It was uncanny. And even to the last time we spent together, it was exactly the same. We had done a tour of three cities in Florida, and we toured. She took us around in her touring bus, which we slept on to go from city to city to city.
Wow.
And we spent some really good time together. It was John and Olivia, and because John flew to the locations, and we
So
rode in
fun.
Olivia's on bus. Um, and then we did these appearances where we screened the film and took questions from the audience. But just adorable, wonderful, lovely human being,
Hmm.
tragically taken too soon.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of young teenage girls, I remember doing my Olivia Newton-John impersonation of Hopelessly Devoted to You. And I think I even used it as an audition song once or twice, you
Oh
know?
yeah, it's a great tune.
Yep.
One of my favorite memories of the film had nothing to do with me being on camera. It was a day that I had to be on the lot for some reason to meet with Alan or somebody, and then I asked if I could go take a peek when they were shooting that number, and I got to watch them shoot that entire number, and that was really special. I'll never forget that. It was beautiful. And I knew at that moment, if nothing else, that part of the film would be just golden because it was so beautifully shot and it was so tender and it was so heartfelt.
Mm.
And the song is great.
Yeah.
It really is a great song. So good for you for auditioning with it.
Yeah. I actually, I have a tiny, tiny connect. I actually auditioned for Grease 2. Didn't go well.
Really?
Yeah, but I did,
Wow.
part of the hundreds of people who auditioned for Grease 2. I went in and I think sang, and that was the end of it, in and out.
Don't you,
Thank you
don't
so
you,
much. Don't
oh,
call us. Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of chatter as we were ending the shoot, and around the time we shot the carnival, which was towards the end of the shoot, there was a lot of chatter about a sequel, and the whole setup is there, but it's never acted upon. We're discussing the bad grades we got, and presumably that was supposed to be the prelude to the sequel. We'd have to come back,
Mm.
have to come back to school
Summer
and
school, at least.
yeah, at the very least.
Uh,
Um, but that reminds me to return to You're the One That I Want.
yeah, please.
We showed up on we showed up on the set that day, and John and Olivia had recorded the song, and they said, "Okay, we got the number that we're going to shoot for the finale. Here it is." And they put it on playback, and we all heard it at Marshall High School on the football field, which had been transformed into the carnival for the very first time on the football field. The entire cast is there and extras. And Pat Burch is listening to it. Randall's listening to it. I mean, they probably had heard it before. I'd like to think they had. Uh, we certainly hadn't. And Pat began to stage it. It was not rehearsed. It was the one thing we had not rehearsed. She staged that in maybe 45 minutes. And that is what you see on film is what she staged in 45 minutes early on a summer morning while the entire cast is waiting.
No pressure. That's a pro.
It was really amazing. And because we had had such a long experience working, it wound up being 13 weeks, and we were maybe in the 12th to 13th week. We had all developed a shorthand, the entire crew, so that it just worked like a well-oiled machine. Um, there was no hesitation. Everybody sprang in action. They knew what to do. We had, crane shots and all that kind of stuff going on. Um, and and it all came together.
It was a
It's
big party.
pretty
It was a big
remarkable.
party. Yeah,
Pretty
that's
darn remarkable.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, you continue to still do various different sorts of events connected with the movie.
Yes. Yeah, we've done some appearances together because I think together we're stronger than if we're apart.
Understand.
Um, we did that tour in Florida in 2018, and we're the Hollywood Bowl occasionally, or probably more regularly than not, does a sing along. We're doing one of those this coming week. Didi Khan hosts, and the rest of us come up there to do everything except moon the audience. I hope. We've done that too, um, but I hope we don't have to this time. So we get together for those things, but we also get together socially from time to time to break bread and catch up and find out what our families are doing and so forth. Yeah, yeah. So we do those events, and they're fun. Signings and pressing the flesh, meeting fans. And there's no shortage of fans. I who knew? Who knew?
Yeah. So
Uh,
how do you feel about that? I mean, I'm clearly part of an ensemble that same sort of thing. So how is that for you?
well, it's always nice to interact with the public and answer questions about the film, especially when you have profound experiences. And this wasn't one of my own, but this I feel like I can relate this because Jamie Donnelly, who played my girlfriend in the film, had this experience in San Antonio where we were meeting people and signing autographs, and a young woman came up to Jamie and she had brought her father's ashes with her.
Mm.
And it so moved Jamie. Uh, she responded in such a wonderful way because it was apparently a film that this young lady's father adored.
Mm.
And in a way, he was finally getting to meet somebody that he was very fond of. Those kind of things really address the profound power that the media has to make an impression on people's lives, to enrich lives. And sometimes I think we don't, as actors, I sometimes think we don't always appreciate the depth to which people really invest in film and television and those experiences. I always go to those things with that in mind.
Mm.
That this is a big moment for people. It takes me back to when I was young and going to school, and there was a screening of The Wizard of Oz, and Ray Bolger was there, and I think Jack Haley was there. For me, that was huge. It was huge. And when I worked briefly in New York, I got to meet Margaret Hamilton. I
Mm.
actually went to her apartment on Gramercy Park. You know, and when I remember those feelings, it gives me a little bit of a sense of what it must be like for people to meet those of us who've been blessed to be in iconic television and film productions.
Thank you for joining me for this segment with Kelly. I want to thank him for taking time out to come and talk to me and you and share aspects of his life and career. I'll be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons. Thanks for watching.